Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Heidi Ortloff. I am the Education Coordinator for Ventura County Resource Conservation District, also known as VCRCD. You might hear that acronym sometimes. I'm the coordinator for this wildfire webinar, which is funded by a grant that the VCRCD was recently awarded from CalFire to help Ventura County prepare for future wildfire threats. Before we get started with our main presentation, I'd like to take a moment to let the attendees know of another grant the VCRCD was recently awarded. My coworker, Coco, is here today to share that opportunity with us. So give me 1 second, Coco, while I share my screen.
Sounds great.
There you go.
Awesome. Thanks, Heidi. Hi, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. My name is Coco. I am with VCRCD on the agricultural team here. And I'm on the Zoom today to quickly talk about our new partnership that we have with CDFA, which is the California Department of Food and Agriculture, offering this extreme weather relief grant for small to medium-sized producers in California. Our application is opening up this upcoming Monday, March 24th. And specifically, this grant is offering eligible applicants to apply to be reimbursed up to $20K every 12 months for approved extreme weather related expenses that you have incurred since 2017. And so I know I just threw a bunch of words at you. So specifically the kinds of expenses that this is covering, I'm first going to go over some examples of extreme weather, which include things like high winds, fires, smoke damage, floods, etc. And so within that, there's various types of expenses that can be covered. Some examples of that include infrastructure and equipment damage or loss, any sort of debris removal expenses that you've paid, equipment for flood control, and any loss of crops or crop sales and replacing crops due to extreme weather. For instance, if a fire took down, a certain slew of crops. Specifically, when I'm talking about eligible applicants who can apply, include farmers making up to $400,000 in total annual gross revenue. And for dairy operations, that cap is $1 million. And so if this is something that you're interested in applying for, firstly, I would definitely recommend checking out our website. It's in that QR code and also in that red bar at the bottom right, because there's a lot more details about examples of extreme weather, examples of eligible expenses that you can see all written down there. We're going to have an intake form that's available again on Monday, March 24th. And if you have questions about eligibility, anything related to this grant, feel free to contact us. All of the contact information is on the right-hand side. We also have Spanish-speaking assistance available as well through our coworker, John. And if this is something you're interested in applying for, I highly recommend starting to gather documentation now to expedite the process, move the application process along, because we do process applications on a first come, first served basis. We also provide technical assistance in the case that documentation isn't available. Us and various RCDs and groups throughout the state of California can offer that assistance to go on site and actually take visible assessments and estimates for the financial loss that your operation might have seen. So that is all of that. I would recommend checking back on our website come Monday to view the application. You can also sign up for our newsletter through our website as well. You'll see information and get a reminder once that's available next week. I don't want to take up any more time, so I'll answer questions in the chat if there are any, but also just feel free to send me an email. Mine's the one on the top on the right-hand side, and I'll send contact info in the chat as well.
Thank you, Coco.
Yeah, thank you.
Also, we can put, like Coco said, she'll put her contact email. We'll also put that website in the chat as well, right, Coco? Yeah, we can put all
Yes.
that stuff in the chat. Thank you. The Ventura County Resource Conservation District is also a member of the Ventura County Wildfire Collaborative, a group of several organizations who are working towards protecting the county from wildfires. With us today is Max Young from the Ventura Regional Fire Safe Council, a member of the Ventura County Wildfire Collaborative. Max is the head of wildfire safety and has done hundreds of home hardening assessments. He even did one for my own home. And he has also helped Ventura County grow from 3 Firewise communities to 29 Firewise communities. Very impressive, Max. We're really thankful for his guidance today. So thank you for joining us.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Heidi.
Mhm.
It took everything within my self-discipline not to throw in some of those pictures from that assessment that I did at your house about 3 years ago.
I thank you for excluding those.
Yeah. But thank you so much for having me here. So we're just going to get right into everything. It's a short webinar. I recognize a lot of the faces and the names that I'm seeing in here too. So hello to everybody that I've met before, and hello to people that I have not met. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see here.
And people with questions, there will be time for questions at the end, right?
There will be plenty of time for questions. I want to get to those as soon as possible because it's a little bit of a more intimate group. Then that way I can kind of adjust and get people the information they're here for. So Heidi, if you could do me a quick favor and
Yeah.
help me share my, there it is. Help me share my screen. Great. Here we are. Alrighty. So I'm just gonna do a quick little thumbs up from those people that have their monitors on that they can see what I'm seeing. Okay, great. So let's get into it. Home hardening and Firewise communities. So today is March 18th, 2025. Again, my name is Max Young. So I've been with the Fire Safe Council for about 3 years. In that time, I've learned a lot. We've gotten a tremendous amount of grant funding in that time as things have evolved and the state is looking for solutions to a lot of the problems we face even here in our backyard in Ventura County. Really quickly, so we work very closely with our Ventura County Wildfire Collaborative partners, the Resource Conservation District being one. If you live in the Ojai Valley, then the Ojai Valley Fire Safe Council is another organization we work closely with, as well as Oak Park, Bell Canyon, and the Ventura Park Fire Safe Council. So we are the Fire Safe Council for the stray cats. We take in everybody else. And we're just here to help. So we are your Fire Safe Council. If you've never engaged with us or learned anything about us, I will be sharing multiple times links to our webpage, and I highly suggest you check us out and check out what we're up to. We'd love to hear from you as far as if there's anything that we're missing, anything that you need. And this is going to be a brief kind of once over of some of these concepts. Additional links to where we can learn more about these things can be found again at my website, the Ventura Regional Fire Safe or venturafiresafe.org website, and a number of others. And so I don't really care who gives you the information. I just care that people take what I'm about to speak on and go and learn more for themselves, because it's only a short amount of time. And I want to leave about 15 minutes for Q&A. So I'm going to wrap up at about 6:45 or so. So with that said, let's get right into it. So for this evening, we're going to talk about the basics of home hardening, one, and then we're going to talk about Firewise communities and more importantly, how to learn more. So when I go over Firewise communities, if anybody here is familiar, it's a bit of a rabbit hole. It's more simple than it might sound, but the real critical thing is how can okay, I'm curious now. I've learned a little bit. I want to take this to the next step, the next level. How do I learn more? And how can I go and find that stuff? So just quick little housekeeping. My chat just appeared. So if anybody is urgently messaging me in the chat, Heidi, can you just flag me down? And that way I'll see it.
Yeah, I'll monitor the chat.
Great. So the photo that you'll see there, particularly proud of, and a quick shout out to that photo. So as Heidi mentioned, when I started this position in the year 2020, Ventura County had about 3 Firewise communities in the entire county. Now we have 29, with many more in the canon. And the photo is of our 800th community in the state of California. Of course, as a nonprofit, we had to make it a fun dog and pony show and a song and dance. Lots of photos, so we invited CalFire to come down. And so that is the state fire marshal taking a photograph with the Ken Crest Ridge Firewise community in our very own Thousand Oaks. That was a really exciting day for us. In fact, actually, I should have been wearing it. I have my Ken Crest Ridge hat right here, so I'll do the rest of it with my hat on. That was really exciting. So some of the resources that I will go over, but wanted to leave them for you guys here in case you want to take a screen grab or just jot them down, but some really great websites. So venturafiresafe.org, vcrcd.org/wildfire, vcfd.org, lots of acronyms, but that's the fire department's website. You can just go to vcfd.org and then navigate to the Fire Hazard Reduction Program page from there if you don't feel like writing that whole thing down. And then a great page is defensiblespace.org. That was a project between a lot of local stakeholders, including our fire department and some folks in the Santa Monica Mountains, that I recommend that page for folks who are interested in achieving some of these kind of property standards, so defensible space and home hardening, and making it look great and retaining our pollinator-friendly designation or drought-tolerant species, and just kind of maintaining the beauty that we're accustomed to in this county, but doing them within the guidelines that will keep our property safer. So defensiblespace.org gets a special shout out. And then the state's page is readyforwildfire.org. And that's constantly being updated from CalFire, and there's lots of great things on there. Okay, so first topic is the basics of home hardening. What do we mean? I've kind of spoiled it, but if anybody can click that little hand, like raise your hand if you kind of have heard the term home hardening, if this is kind of brand new to you, or if we're in familiar territory. All right, so we got a couple people familiar, and might be new to some folks, but the photo that you're seeing is for a promotional demo that was conducted by the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. They did this demonstration really for the photo op that it presented. So on the left-hand side, you have a portion of a home built to industry standard. So everything about that house is constructed like it's a real house, and with some of the not so fire resilient characteristics that we see in the WUI, the Wildland Urban Interface. And then on the right side, they did the exact opposite. And then they sprayed a ton of embers at it through an airplane hangar, essentially, and really got the evidence. So with these zone zero principles and guidelines that we're learning about these building materials and some of these simple things, we know that embers that are thrown because of a wildfire, that are cast aloft because of a wildfire and blown around in the wind, they are responsible for the real majority of ignitions. And that's exactly what we mean when we're talking about home hardening, is how do we take those small steps, sometimes they're bigger steps, to retrofit our existing home to make it more resilient to embers cast from a wildfire. Because suppose I lived in Thousand Oaks and I'm right up against 10,000 acres of open space. I'm really stoked on my backyard and my view, but I could mow down the weeds and all the shrubs and all the vegetation, you know, a quarter mile from my backyard, just nothing, just bare dirt. And there's still no way that I could prevent fire from coming onto my property, because the simple fact is, during these wind events, we can have fire throwing embers your way from over a mile from the active flame front. So because I can't prevent fire from entering my property, I got to make my property more resilient to fire that does enter it. We were all around for January and watched the news, I'm sure, quite a bit, but you know, even within here in Ventura County, we've had some seriously major fires in the past 10 years, historic precedents in these fires. So we had Thomas in 2017, Wolseley and Hill in 2018, and the 24 Mountain Fire just November. I'm sure most folks can remember that pretty well. And very simple, 3 consistent conditions with all 3 of those events. We had a northeast Santa Ana wind event. We had overwhelmed resources, and what resulted from just those simple 2 criterion was house-to-house spread and the combustion of ornamental vegetation. So a fire that began in our wildlands in the ecosystems that have vegetation that might be dried out because it's not rained in some time. It was intense enough that fire from that ecosystem then transferred into the ornamental vegetation, the shrub, the ficuses that we have around our neighborhood that we water all the time. And because of those winds, they acted as drying, accelerating the process for our ornamental vegetation to dry out. And in all 3 of those fires, we saw essentially a wildland fire become an urban conflagration. And it's because of that crossover. When that crossover occurs is when in the state of California and in Colorado and in Maui, even, we see the largest number of structures destroyed because it is simply too much work all at the same time. And our resources, our firefighters get tremendously overwhelmed, and they are focused on trying to save lives, which is what they should be doing. But in the meantime, if I have my home in these areas, I'm really hoping that I did everything I could so that the house survives when I get back. So we're going to get into that, how to do it today. But before we do, so this is a video from a fire in 2020, I think it was. I might have my year wrong, but this was outside of Denver. So it was in Colorado Springs, Colorado. This is the Marshall Fire. And these folks had snow on the ground, about 8 inches of snow, only about a week prior to this fire igniting. Now, the sun came out, dried all the snow, but because of the invasive grasses that they have around this community and the tremendously high wind speeds that they experienced, but when this fire ignited, it blew really hard, really fast into a subdivision where it got into the homes, and before you knew it, we had that urban conflagration, so house to house spread. So this ring camera, the footage that we're seeing is of one home on the right-hand side, fully involved, so fully on fire, and you're just seeing on the feed blowing away from that home as the gusts of wind continue, just showers of embers. And the embers don't always happen all at once, but they can just blow really forcefully all about the neighborhood. I don't see any fire personnel in this video. Likely it's a complete overwhelm of the resources, and those folks are in life-saving mode. And so when this is occurring, you know, we're hoping that we can, well ahead of this event happening, take the steps to make the house more resilient before this happens. So it's only got a second left. So as you can see now, the embers are blowing down the street with those gusts of wind, and those embers are ignited pieces of woody or man-made materials or natural materials, and anything that they land on and accumulate around can therefore ignite. So if I'm looking at the cardboard box in the bottom left of the frame. I don't know what happened to this home in particular, but I'm hopeful that embers didn't, blow over and accumulate next to that cardboard box, get it ignited, and then, potentially lead into the home. only one more video for you, but this one is further demonstrating that point. So on a much smaller scale, but very similar to the 2024 mountain fire that we had high winds and we had an ignition from a relatively common place. So in this case, I'm looking at the still image here. It looks like it was off of a roadway. So that happens a lot. People might throw cigarettes out the window. In this case, during the mountain fire, it was agriculture equipment, heavy equipment operating on, day-to-day operations, and something ignited. And before you know it, because of the wind and the dryness of the fuels, the fire was able to carry very quickly towards this subdivision. And from there, it really stops becoming a wildland fire. And what you have instead is that phrase that I keep saying is an urban conflagration. So in this case, the fire transferred from the grasses that are, they burn really quickly. All of that black burnt grass is probably cool enough for you and I to just walk right on top of. There's no heat there left, there's no flames. But then it got into our man-made materials, those combustible things that compose our properties and our homes, like the fences and the sheds, RVs, boats, and then it leads into the homes themselves. So that is why within my world, and if you haven't heard of it, probably in a short amount of time, your world as well, the Zone Zero news and developments have been very large in terms of their import. So backing up a bit, Zone Zero, what am I talking about? So Zone Zero is a new zone, about 4 or 5 years old. In the state of California, we talk about defensible space, and historically it was always, about 30 feet away from the house, and then from 30 to 100 feet away from the house. How are the weeds looking? Are you keeping things at a management level that's, sufficient for community safety? Well, the Zone Zero is new, and it's because of all this research that we're doing and a lot of what we're learning after these fires occur, and we go in and try and figure out what happened. So within Zone Zero, one of the things that we're learning, and it's perfectly demonstrated with these photographs from the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, embers aloft from a wildfire are blowing towards your home. And that 0 to 5 feet is very intentional. It's very specific for a reason. And it's because they've learned that the embers that kind of get within 5 feet of your home, they can blow right over the top, as you can, let's see here. As you can see with this little cast of embers, they can blow right over the top, but they can also hit the wall and kind of make their way down towards the base. So this very bright orange glow at the base of this structure, that's where just all these embers that are getting blown towards the house are hitting the wall, falling, and then they're accumulating right there. And they can kind of spin and spiral within that area. And as they blow away, the research is really showing us that they almost don't. Embers that kind of enter into that first 0 to 5 foot zone don't exit. They kind of get trapped. And so around our structures, if we, just think about how much stuff do I have around my structure that's within 5 feet? And is it combustible? So if we have wooden mulch, if we have, some lavender, some rosemary, I have my bench when I take off my sneakers, all that kind of thing is going to be potentially susceptible to a tremendous number of embers coming its way. And if we are in a situation where there is tremendous resource overwhelm, well, I got to expect all of those combustible materials to ignite, and they could lead to the home igniting itself. And so home hardening is really all about reducing the likelihood of ignition occurring inside this zone, because if we have fire around our house, but it isn't touching our house and it isn't getting inside, well, we're in great shape. And that's what we want to prevent. That's what we want to do. So some of the basics, if I'm this side of the house, I really hope that I don't have, damage to my siding, because as I mentioned, these embers are blowing in, they're hitting the siding, and what we don't want to have happen is them getting lodged or stuck anywhere where then, ignition could occur. If I have vents that are exposed to this side of the ember cast. Over here would be a very common area where most homes in Ventura County have a gable end assembly or soffit vents over here. What size screen do I have for those? Because we screen our vents so that we don't get rodents and bumblebees and all sorts of random stuff entering into our attic against our will. But what we've learned is that we actually just, with a simple screening modification, we can reduce the number of embers that can come in by about 90%, which is really huge, especially considering, thank God, just how cheap screening can be. So what you're seeing here is the full breadth of our combined understanding of how these zones operate. So within a big fire, as it rolls into a populated man infrastructure made, kind of community, what are these zones and why do they matter? So the zone 0, as you'll see, is consistent for all the structures. It has 5 feet from every structure, including our outbuildings. Inside this zone, we call it our ember resistant zone. So we want this to be as ember resistant as possible. Now for this home that has a deck extending off the back side, well, that deck is attached to our house. And so whatever happens to that deck also happens to the house. We include that in our zone 0. And then from there, we have our 5 to 30 foot zone and our 30 to 100 foot zone. And the kind of spacing you're seeing here is, obviously very abnormal for Ventura County. We share lots of zones with our neighbors. And for that reason, and that very important reason, it takes working with our neighbors to achieve full community resilience against events like this in the future. And we'll talk about how we can do that a little bit more when we get to Firewise. But the most important takeaway, I hope, if you have, of this portion would be that for looking at your own property with regards to wildfire safety, starting with the house and working your way backwards is usually the way to go. So as Heidi mentioned, I've done a couple hundred home hardening assessments in Ventura County, and I can't tell you the number of which I've gone to, and I meet some nice folks, and they're walking me around their property, and they're pointing a quarter mile away into property that's not theirs or not their responsibility, and they're saying, look at all that dead, there's some dead oak trees, there's all this stuff, yada, yada. How do we take care of this? And I can't help but, thinking, boy, we just walked past a ton of shredded bark mulch and lavender and manzanita all around your house. Like, we got to take care of that first, because, you can have lots of fuel, super far away, but regardless of the state of the property that's not your responsibility, the embers will make its way to you. So we got to make sure your portion of the, your side of the street is clean. So within that zone 0, we really are preaching 0 combustibles. So what we mean by that, we mean patio furniture, we mean furniture cushions, any kind of woody plant. Folks are usually surprised when they see how little amount of vegetation it takes ignited to break a window or break a window pane. Most folks think that they can have, something up close to their house and, oh, it's not enough to really ignite the house, but our windows are a big vulnerability. And for many people, it's our siding as well. So for that reason, woody plants, vines, and trees, we don't like to recommend in this zone. Wooden mulch. Wooden mulch is great to get anything growing in this county. Otherwise, your plants aren't going to be that stoked. But the truth is, as we saw, those embers like to hit the wall, drop to the ground, look for something to ignite. And wooden mulch is particularly perfect for them. It's a very receptive fuel bed. And wooden mulch also produces a tremendous number of embers. And so you're kind of exasperating a problem by having mulch within 5 feet of your home. Even things that you might not expect, like plastic sheds. So plastic is ultimately a oil-based product. It will combust, it will melt, but it can also ignite other things. And then firewood. So, this slide is mostly to for you to take a second to think about what is on my property. Do I know where those vents are or what kind of screenings they have? And what is within that zone 0 that could potentially combust if, you know, a tremendous number of embers were to be blown at the house for potentially hours on end with nobody home. Okay. And how to learn more. So I just went over the very basics, but I cannot recommend enough the website from Sustainable Defensible Space. That's defensiblespace.org. They have all of these principles laid out with really tremendous photos and infographics. And then, of course, our Ventura County Fire Department is a plethora of resources and expertise, and they're constantly working around the clock to update all of their guides with the highest standards possible in terms of the new information that's continually being released. And their Defensible Space Maintenance Guide is great. You can find it at their webpage. And also you can have us come out and teach you. So you can sign up on my website, the venturafiresafe.org website, and you can schedule a free, no cost, we call them home hardening assessments. And that's when one of our assessors will come to your home. Usually takes about an hour, and the information is completely private. It's just between us. We don't share it with insurance or fire. We don't want you to get punished for just kind of learning more about your situation. And we can help you take those confusing infographics with properties that aren't really realistic for our county and apply the principles to your acreage and your home. Okay, and I'll drop this link here in the chat shortly so that I can move on. So a little bit of time. Yeah, let's do it. So I mentioned earlier, neighbors helping neighbors in Firewise USA. So you saw the video from Colorado. Depending on how far away some of our homes are in our community, what happens to your neighbor's home is likely to happen to yours. And as we saw in Palisades and Eaton, these big ones are occurring at massive scales with tremendous numbers of structures lost. And so Firewise USA is, how do we get everybody on this street together to lower the risk and the collective risk? Because all of our zones overlap, and we really need to be working together to address maybe the vacant lot or that area that's shared and, you know, nobody's really touched it for a long time. So Firewise USA is a great program to do that. I've said it once and I'll say it again. We had 3 when I started, and now we're at 29. If you're curious if there are any efforts underway near you, or if maybe you're in one and you didn't know, we do have a map we keep updated on our website. There are more than what you're seeing here, but it's because we'll need to zoom in with the map scroll, and you can see if your community is recognized in good standing, maybe in development, but not yet recognized. That's a great opportunity to reach out to see what you can do to help. And you can just see, you know, oh boy, we don't have one going in my neighborhood, but just up the street, they got one. We need to talk to them to see how they did it, right? So really quickly, what is Firewise USA? It's a national program administered by the National Fire Protection Association. So it's not administered by us, nor is it administered by CalFire. It's free and it's voluntary. There's no regulation or enforcement involved. So at this time, it is still very much the honor system. And there are more than 2,400 communities across the country. It's a tremendous program. We preach it for a lot of the reasons that you'll quickly understand if you dive in to learn more. Some of the benefits are helping. So if I have a community group, hey, me and my neighbors have been talking, we just don't know what to do. So Firewise is precisely for those folks. It is getting a framework for action. So you learn about your risk and about wildfire. You kind of build community, so you make those connections around the neighborhood as you need to meet people and get people on board. And then really importantly and really cool, because when I started my job, this was absolutely unheard of, and we never thought we'd see it, but you garner access to funding opportunities. So in the past 18 months, my Firewise coordinator, Natasha Saxena, has successfully distributed almost over $20,000 to individual Firewise communities for specific projects to lower their community's risk to wildfire. So why is that a big deal? I'm gonna harp on this a second. At the moment, there are grant opportunities from CalFire, from, I was gonna say the Forest Service, but not so much, other organizations that are hoping to get ahead of this problem. And it's very difficult if you're not a registered 501c3 with your tax ID and your charter and your bylaws to really put in for a grant to get that money. You know, if I'm Max and I have 10 neighbors and we just want to get a handle on some of these huge trees that we didn't plant, well, I don't know how to write a grant to get that money. But what we're doing now is we are writing grants on behalf of our Firewise communities in Ventura County, and we're just distributing those funds as we get them. So if something is identified in your community wildfire risk assessment as something we need to get a handle on, and you present us with a plan on, hey, we're gonna hire, you know, Jim's buddy's an arborist and he can go and trim some of these trees for us. Well, great, we'll pay for it. You just manage the project. So that's a really big one. I cannot emphasize how critical it is enough. And we're really pleased with that. Another huge benefit is to get ahead of some of these changing laws and insurance regulations. So the time window on getting ahead of these things is slowly closing as these things are coming more into fruition. But ultimately, the objective is to make your home safer from wildfire. And I think Firewise USA is a great program for doing that. The 6 basic steps on how to do that, for those at home, this is just to form a team. So you need to get together with some neighbors and you need to get at least, you know, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 to buy in. Yeah, we'll see this through with you, and then we can get to work. So there's a community wildfire risk assessment that we can complete, and we can complete your action plan. So then you've gone out and you've taken your community's wildfire risk. Now let's sit down and let's talk about what we can do about that plan or that risk. And let's do it in an action plan that's tangible and realistic and over maybe 3 years. And what can we get done in that time? And then we just report on our actions. So we report on the investment and any vegetation we've removed. Every year, we're going to host an outreach event because we need to get more of our neighbors involved. And then we can apply online to get that recognition. And it's really just about that simple. This is exactly just a screen grab from our webpage, where if you go to our webpage into Firewise USA Assistance, you can click on every single one of these numbers to learn more about that specific task. I mentioned investment hours, so I'm not going to fly through it and past it. But when we talk about investment hours, it's really anything that you do or anything that you and your neighbors do to lower that risk. It could be for your community, for your home, or to organize these efforts. So some of the examples would be, you know, coordinating your annual outreach event, or having meetings with the local fire safe council, the fire department, to learn about what your community could be doing. If I go up and I spend an hour cleaning my gutters, as this very not staged individual is doing, well, that's an hour of my time. That's an hour I can report as investing into my wildfire reduction for the year. And I only emphasize, you know, this slide is to show that there are so many, you know, if you go to any of these web pages, you'll see we're trying to shove these how-tos and guides and lists down your throat. So there are no shortage of opportunities to get those hours. And if you're hoping to learn more about Firewise USA specifically, I'll plug our monthly Firewise USA workshops. So we will have sometimes guest speakers from the Ventura County Fire Department, or the state, or the insurance commissioner's office, or you name it. and we'll importantly also bring Firewise communities that are in good standing, and we'll bring those board members there so that you guys can connect. Hey, I want to learn more about how you folks did it. Sounds like your community is similar to mine, and vice versa. And we just bring everybody together to plug you. And I may or may not be speaking at the one in April. So if you're tired of hearing me speak, you can skip that one. Just come back in May. Also linked here is you can book a little 15-minute consultation with Natasha to hear maybe you got a hang up and I need some expert advice on how do I get past this. And you can also watch all of the past workshops on YouTube. I said 6:45 and I just about did it. So what's been going on in the chat?
I've been sharing links for you.
Great.
Someone wanted to know, do you guys have a backup for home hardening assessments, or like how long would people have to wait if they wanted to book you?
That's a spectacular question. So at the moment, we are absolutely and completely overwhelmed with the demand for home hardening assessments. And we are backed up, I would say, I think 4 months. So since we've begun encountering that bottleneck, we have trained and put on contract 2 full-time assessors. Russell Rawls, who is a Ventura, LA County fire captain. He's spectacular. I was talking with him today. And then another wildland firefighter. And we are urgently, very much aware of this backup that we're encountering, but about 4 months. So if you're hoping to get these, the time when it's raining and nobody's thinking about fire is the perfect time to sign up.
Another comment in the chat was just expressing the desire to see examples of that zone 0 treatments that
look good.
Yeah.
Yes. Barbara, I'm gonna reply a few links. So I mentioned the defensiblespace.org. Another one that I adore is the Theodore Payne Foundation in Santa Clarita, because I very much don't enjoy, I wouldn't want to live on a property with a moonscape either, but I have seen it done time and time again where folks are doing these landscaping jobs completely in line with everything that myself and CalFire would preach, but they also just look great. So I will drop some links into the chat.
And if anyone has any other questions, you can either type it into the chat or you can raise your hand and I can call on you to unmute yourself, like in a classroom or something. I have a question for you, Max. So I understand like not having vegetation or anything flammable under your eaves, and putting tighter screening on your vents and things like that. If you do both of those, is it still a smart move to enclose your eaves like some people do, where you no longer see like all like the wood underneath?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. No, this really is a spectacular question. So there are the example that I might give would be the Fukushima power plant in Japan. So that power plant, that nuclear power plant in a earthquake-prone area, was built to withstand a 8.8 earthquake. It was near an earthquake fault line. And then what they got was a 9.0. And that is what caused the Fukushima power plant to melt down, is just that they planned for X and they got X plus. So I very rarely ever consult folks to consider fully boxing in their eaves, because you're talking about usually somewhere between $12,000 and $25,000 for a normal sized home. And if I have that amount of money to spend, boy, I'm going to do a whole lot more elsewhere and I might not even have a need to box in my eaves by the time I'm done spending that money, if that makes sense. So my first thought, if I have that amount of money to play with, is let's get the fuel away from the eaves where it could become trapped. And maybe I also paint and reseal my eaves if there are gaps and cracks and wood rot. And sure, following all of that work, if I, have that money or, I win the lottery, then great. I might actually box in my eaves, but there are many, many steps and many, many projects around a property that I would say to tackle first before we spend that amount of money. Now, that's not consistent across the board. So a roof is also, a $20,000 to $30,000 replacement job. However, it just so happens that the roofs are extremely vulnerable and critical to our home safety. So if a roof is really in bad shape, I might recommend a roof replacement. And so it's about, if we're seriously considering, a soffit job, then that's when I say, why don't we get many eyeballs on it and many expert opinions to see if it's truly necessary, because the opportunity cost of using that money there is taking away presumably from other jobs that might be more effective.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question in the comment, a comment in the chat, of hoping to learn how the new LRA fire hazard severity maps are going to be rolled out in Ventura County. And I know maybe that's the fire department might know more, but if you know anything, feel free to
Yeah.
jump.
I won't speak on behalf of the fire department, but Kevin, the answer to your question is they have been rolled out already. So they were released for Ventura County on March 10th, 2025. I dropped a link in the chat. It's kind of up a bit, so I will post it here. So they can be viewed at the link that I just provided. And they can also be downloaded from CalFire's webpage. Now, as far as the more general part of the question, how are they going to be rolled out? Well, they don't exactly need to be rolled out. So the period for public comment there was 2 held in Ventura County, and those were last year. And the state, as mandated by the state Congress and state Senate, have the responsibility of making these. And it's been 12 years in the making, and they're done. And so here they are. And in Ventura County, the only responsibility that our county government has is to accept this new information and act upon it. So, regardless if we're happy or upset with the changes to our fire hazard severity zones, and I will say that scientifically, there's very little reason that we wouldn't just and that I'm not grateful for the new information. I've been waiting on these for a very long time to help direct my efforts. The Ventura County Fire Department just, I think, got a 35% increase in the number of properties they're now legally mandated by the state of California to assess on an annual basis. Now, they've been planning on this for quite a long time, but that's a change in the budget. That's a change in staff and personnel and operations. It's very lofty, the changes that come with these, but that's just what it is. And if you're curious about these fire hazard severity zone maps, or you're wondering what it is we're talking about at all, this webpage explains how these maps are created. And also on this webpage, you can download the data from the map on the link I just shared, and PDF versions of the maps as well.
Max,
Yeah.
so there is a page where you type in an address and it goes right to it and shows you your parcel's status. My question was really the rollout by mean is is Ventura County Fire Department changing any of the ordinances because of that? Or are they looking to more, like, what's the 0 to 5 thing going to happen with the governor's executive order? And, is that enforceable now to certainly new development, but when are they going to start demanding retroing to everybody that's in a very high or something like that, like based on the
Yeah.
map?
No, I gotcha. That's a great question. I was hoping nobody would ask this of me this evening.
Sorry.
So I'm glad that you have.
Well, forget it.
No. It's very important. I'm just being coy, but Kevin's right in that last month, late last month, or maybe early this month, time is eluding me, but the Board of Forestry and Fire Protection held their final meeting to approve the new and long time coming Zone 0 guidelines for the entire state of California. Now, they've approved it, but that doesn't mean now that they take effect, because I think there's just some red tape and signatures and T's to cross and I's to dot. And I wouldn't pretend to understand entirely, but in Ventura County, effective March 1, 2025, VCFD has implemented a full 5-foot non-combustible Zone 0 for new buildings and additions to buildings effective immediately. So as far as existing buildings, we have always heard and been told to expect that to be 1 calendar year later. But now I'm getting a bit beyond my skis. At the moment, as we speak, I printed this out so that I would know exactly what the guidelines are. But VCFD standard 515 is being updated as we speak to reflect this change. If you have any questions regarding this change, it asks you to reach out to the Fire Hazard Reduction Program for Ventura County Fire Department. As far as anything that was submitted to the fire department prior to that date, including landscape plans or permits or clearance, permits, those are all being honored. But as far as existing buildings or, future building permits, landscape plans for review, I will suspect that Zone 0 will be applied to those beginning at a certain date.
And Kevin, this could be a future webinar. Maybe we'll have the fire department have their team come on to explain this, so we don't put Max in the position of trying to make sense of what the fire department needs to do.
Yeah, I hope that if anybody is curious to learn more, the expectation is that by the April Firewise workshop, I will have a better understanding, because I have a few meetings between now and then to hopefully learn more about what these changes mean.
And Max, do you know much about fire retardant paint or coatings for structures?
I do. Yeah, that's also a good one. The effectiveness of intumescent paint or fire retardant applications on homes can be it can be tremendously effective, but it can also be tremendously temperamental. So if I have a standard sized home and I apply fire retardant paint over the entirety of the home, immediately after I apply, there's a clock ticking as far as when that effectiveness and the fire retardant characteristics of that product expire. And then also that the characteristics of that product expire faster under different conditions. So the side of my house that gets the forefront of the wind, that expires faster. If my sprinklers are getting that side of that wall wet every night, well, that's gone very fast. Or even sunlight. So if direct sunlight is hitting, at its strongest part of the day on this side of the house, well, then the effectiveness of the fire retardant on that side goes away faster as well. And so they've never been thought to be a permanent fix. If anything, they are thought to be a Band-Aid. I would, if I were within the WUI, I'd be still very pleased if you know, fire retardant was dropped out of an airplane and it coated my house, I'd be stoked, even if my paint was ruined. But applying it at the beginning of the year and thinking I'm good for 12 months is a very false sense of security, and an expensive one as well. We were told that we needed 1/16 inch vent screening, and then someone else said we only needed 1/8 inch. Lorraine, that is a great question. So at the moment, the IBHS and CalFire, two very reputable organizations, say that you would like the recommendation is 1/8 inch screening. Now, 1/16 inch screening is also good. However, you can encounter ventilation issues if you apply it without a professional and licensed contractor, because we still need air to flow through these vents and into these spaces so that we don't accumulate moisture. And if we do 1/16 inch on everything under certain building codes and stuff, we might have moisture issues in the future. So I would say you could feel comfortable with 1/8 inch. And they also do make assemblies that are a little, they're 1/8 inch screening, but maybe they have baffling. So, you know, aluminum that kind of covers part of it so that the air still freely flows, but there's a little bit more screening, or some have all manner of different characteristics, up to and including the fanciest ones that have the chemical honeycombing. But I would not spend $2,000 on a vent. I'd find a happy medium of what I like and what will fit my property, and then go with that.
And can you please talk about how wood gates adjoining houses for that zone 0, and what should people do in that circumstance?
Yeah, so zone 0 will significantly impact everybody within these fire hazard severity zones or within the wildland urban interface. And you're correct in noting that one of the biggest ones might be fences and gates as they connect directly to the house. So that first video that I showed from Texas, or the second one from Texas, is a great reason for that. If I have a property line that goes out 60 feet from my structure and it's all wood, well, I can have fire 60 feet away, but I have a wooden fuel pathway to connect it all the way to my home. Now the law will almost certainly, we'll just need to be replacing those portions of our wooden fences that are 5 feet from the wall of our home. So that's not an entire wooden fence, but that first 5 feet is what is going to be needing to be non-combustible. And I will say that the construction market is beginning to catch up, in that when I first started, there were very few companies offering non-combustible options that weren't very expensive wrought iron or chain link. Nowadays, I'm aware of at least 2 or 3 companies in the county that are working with some kind of sleek looking aluminum that's a little cheaper and lighter weight than wrought iron. And I'm also seeing lots of ingenuity. So around like Ojai and even in Ventura, I'm seeing lots of the use of corrugated aluminum, you know, a very chic kind of aesthetic, like an Airstream. And people are framing corrugated aluminum with metal or Trex or Hardy board, and it looks really great. So it will be a bit of a shock initially, but it will eventually help. As one of the meetings I had with the fire department after the mountain fire, there were a tremendous number of photos that I noticed, lots of wooden fences and gates that were attached to structures, where hand crews had gone and just using a chainsaw cut as close as they could to the house and then kicked the rest over so that there's no fuel touching the home.
Are succulents combustible?
Everything is combustible. So if a succulent combusts, we are probably dealing with temperatures in which, even if I have stucco siding, the wood studs could be spontaneously combusting due to off-gassing and high temperatures. But succulents can combust, and in fact, I have been reading that jade in particular was shocking a number of firefighters during the Palisades incident for contributing and carrying fire to other fuel sources.
I heard that fake grass is combustible as well. Is that true?
It is, yeah. It combusts in a way that's unique and maybe similar to a garbage can, a plastic, garbage can, or a plastic utility shed, in that it kind of melts and turns black. But what you're not seeing is that it is producing the chemical combustion components necessary to transfer fire into other things.
And then someone saying you mentioned Trex. Isn't that bad too?
I have not heard bad things about Trex. So Trex materials are, it's a composite, wooden composite material that has been popularized in use of, making a deck look wooden, but it's really not wooden. And Trex can combust as well, but typically Trex decks perform tremendously well versus a wooden alternative.
So they're better than wood.
Yes.
But hey, someone's saying Larry Williams with the fire department says
Oh,
no
if
Trex.
Larry says no Trex, then no Trex. I redact.
But he's retiring.
Yeah, he's retiring. But Larry reads more of these and stays more on top of it than I do. So if there's something about Trex that I'm not aware of, it just means I haven't done the homework necessary. So I'll have to look into that.
And where can people go to get specifics on what products they can use for gates or fencing touching their house, since plastics are combustible?
That's a great question. So Leslie, I don't have a great answer at the moment. The Fire Safe Council is still working to try and get a recommended contractors list out to our constituents. And among those, desperately needed would be fencing contractors. At the moment, though, I would say that many of the contractors that I have worked with in the county do offer non-combustible options. But it's the trick that I've learned is shopping around for those that aren't just wrought iron, because that can be quite expensive, and also not just chain link fencing, because most folks don't prefer that aesthetically. So it's shopping around, and then just also being forthright with your contractor. So I did once work with a fencing contractor who had never before installed a non-combustible fence, but he'd been in the business 15 years. And when I explained the need, he just made it work. And we wound up with a really sleek looking fence made out of hardy board that was non-combustible, but it was just new for them.
Cool. Any last questions? I know we've already been a little over time, but we do want to help as many people as we can. If you have a question, feel free to raise your hand.
Yeah, real quick. On the outreach event, I had this vision of gathering everybody in the community and having them come to a meeting. Most of my neighborhoods, they don't come to any of their HOA meetings. They don't. So what are the different flavors of outreach events that can satisfy that need? And you have to do that before you submit your application, correct?
Yeah, you do. I wouldn't stress too much about it. So you need to give it the old college try, and that's the only thing that's required. So I've been to some that community of 100 people, and you got 20 people to show up. Well, from a nonprofit's point of view, and I'm sure Heidi can relate, that's a great turnout for what we're used to. You can get creative. We always, hype up getting Costco, some snacks, bribe people. hey, we'll have cake or something.
Food does help.
Food helps. Doing it on an evening, or also doing it on time, not choosing Super Bowl Sunday morning to do it when everybody's got plans. Historically, I'm aware that Thursday evenings seem to be the best for getting people to turn out. Early in the week, we're still overwhelmed. We got to get the kids to practices, all that. Thursday evenings seem to work better because weekends we got plans and it's not so daunting to go into work Friday after doing something the night before. Not saying that, oh, it's going to be a 3-hour kickoff event with 20 activities, just keeping it short and simple. And if you're Pyru, they brought a keg and that seemed to work great. So, whatever works.
Any last questions? I guess, Max, what's the cheapest, easiest thing people can do?
The cheapest and most effective thing you can do is to rescreen your vents with 1/8 inch screening and clear as many combustibles away from your house as possible. That's something that every person can do themselves. And you don't need, we can have slick landscapes with hardscaping and professional jobs, but we can first just get things safe and then think about that in the future.
I remember you once told me a good goal was just filling up your green trash can every week and
Yeah.
making sure the stuff isn't piling up and you're staying on top of it. And I actually, I took that to heart. I do that.
Oh, that's all. I forgot that I said that. That is a great goal. Yeah, because if the green trash bin is empty at the end of a month and something that stuff that's somewhere on your property.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, it looks like unless I have anyone unmuting themselves right now. Oh, one more question. Since I can't rescreen, what type of contractor is experienced in that? And I do think that's a common
That is a
issue you've
common
come
one.
across.
And again, I'm hoping to have better answers for that type of question. So if you cannot rescreen, then what's likely necessary is a little bit more in-depth replacement. And for that reason, we don't want people on our roofs or up and around our eaves that aren't pros. So a general licensed contractor, not a handyman, but a licensed contractor can do that. And then a roofing contractor would be who I would choose for people getting on my roof because they do that quite frequently. And they're also experienced in how to get onto roofs without causing damage to them. So roofing contractors for roof vents, and then a general contractor for any other vents that maybe are in stucco or can't be rescreened.
Max, there was a shout out to a company called Blaze Busters on, I think it was on Nextdoor, and these companies, they'll come and do your hardening assessment and then they will do the work for you if you pay them.
Yeah,
Blaze Busters, have you heard of them?
blaze blockers.
Blockers, okay.
I'm not allowed to recommend any individual contractor, but again, I'm working on that list. And I will say that Jeff and the Blaze Blockers team will likely be on that list. That's all I can probably say.
Sure.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Well, Max, could you leave your email in the chat?
Yeah,
just in case there's
absolutely.
anyone else.
Org.
And as I said earlier, a recording of this will be made available on the VCRCD's YouTube channel sometime next week. It'll go up. And if you're one of those people who joined because you got an email at 4 p.m., that is because you're not subscribed to our monthly newsletter. You are subscribed to a newsletter from like an older grant that was one of our wildfire grants from a couple years ago. That's no longer funded. And just on a whim, I was like, I don't know if we have complete overlap, so I'm going to email these people. So if you could go to, I put the link, it's higher up in the chat, but you could go to vcrcd.org and then up in the main menu, there's one of those like get involved, go to the sign up option. You can get on the monthly newsletter for all general stuff, and you get that email monthly. That's where you'll get most frequent updates from when we book programs like this. And these wildfire webinars, they will be being held quarterly. So maybe if I'm lucky, we'll get someone to come talk to us about those fire maps. One last question for you, Max, that looks like it's related to Firewise communities. What outreach is being done with general contracting community to be on board with Firewise recommendations?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Funny thing that happened to me, I had their card here for a while, but I had an assessment where 5 people were there, and that's not sometimes abnormal. They kind of just ambushed me. I did the whole assessment, and then all 5 of them said, we're actually all general contractors. We've owned our own businesses for a long time. We wanted to see what this was all about because we keep hearing so much about it, but we didn't know what you were talking about. We wanted to see it for ourselves. I was stoked. I got all their cards. But essentially with the general contracting community, if you think of it from a supply and demand side, there's been a demand for a number of services, and that demand has been relatively not changed for probably 3 decades. The biggest one in the past 4 decades has been solar. And now you've seen solar. Now you can get solar, every county has a bunch of solar providers. All of the retrofits that I talk about doing, any general contractor is probably very well equipped from a skill set point of view and a know-how point of view to do all of these things. The mismatches right now, plugging in the specific demand with what they can supply. So if I say I need to retrofit my screens or I want soffits installed, well, these are things that, in this county, they may have never come across. And they're kind of wanting to learn more. What are you talking about? Like, I can probably do it, but what are we actually talking about? So at the moment, I'm having meetings with the Ventura County Contractors Association. I'm having meetings with big landscape companies in the county, and we're trying to put together a training curriculum for folks. And, ideally then they can then advertise their supply more fitting to the demand that they're encountering from homeowners who are, articulating points that are coming from me, but that they're trying to get their mind around, if that makes sense. So, and then at the same time, there does need to be more, Leslie, with regard to big box stores. So I've gone to Lowe's and Home Depot and Ace quite a bit to say, hey, these vents, 90% of your guys' customers come from the WUI, we're in Simi Valley or something like that. These are still the bad vents, right? What if we actually just got other ones too and put them right next to it? Well, that's like barking at the moon. I've never gotten anywhere. So these things will come, and these changes will certainly, catch up when I'm not even here anymore, but it'll just take time. And in the meantime, I highly recommend what Kevin was doing, going to Nextdoor, finding people who have used certain handyman or contractors, verifying their licenses so that you're covered, and then just having conversations. Sometimes these folks are hard to pin down, but I swear if you get them to your property for a little walk around and a quote and you explain it, as best you can, they can absolutely do it. It's just sometimes that mismatch in what you're saying versus what they're used to hearing.
Okay. Well, we are running over our time.
Yep.
I know people
All
probably
right.
have dinners to go to, and
Yep.
you got a dog to feed or something, Max.
I do.
Yeah. So hopefully you have all of our contact. I'm going to leave my contact information down here too. There's any questions you want to send to me. If you have suggestions for future webinars, please send those my way. Like I said, I will be arranging these quarterly. But with all that being said, thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate having as many residents as possible eager to learn more and do what they can to protect their homes. So thank you, and thank you, Max.
Thanks, guys.